Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Good to have you on. We've got two Jims on today, so I'll let you. Jim Fisk, you're the executive chairman of the board. Jim Hawkins, you're the new CEO. Welcome.
Hi, Jerrod.
I guess Jim Fisk. Let's have a quick start with you because the first thing that I noticed is that the colors and the logo are a little bit different. So a bit of rebranding since part one of being on the show.
Yes, sir. We have rebranded. Railveyor no longer has the hyphen. We've changed the colors. We've changed the fonts, and we're trying to bring our identity up to a much more modern standard. Hopefully, a much more appealing and modern standard.
You were talking on air. There's it's doing a rebrand when you've been around for a while. It can create some discussion.
Well, everybody has opinions on colors, and fonts and sizes, and in our case, it gets especially interesting because I'm about 80% colorblind. So when I'm listening to massive discussions about different colors, it kind of don't mean much to me, but it does to everybody else.
Yeah. No, I've done some branding work for companies over the years, and it gets quite interesting. And I mean this genuinely. I actually quite enjoyed it. Jim Hawkins, new CEO, new position. How long have you been with Railveyor now?
Yeah, I started in October of last year, so we're getting to the point where maybe it's not so new anymore. But yeah, I joined the company after a 35-year career at a major construction and mining OEM. And the last role I had there with a lot of focus on mining technology and automation.
Right. Did you come in before or after the rebranding discussions?
I came in at the very tail end of it. Yes. In fact, perfect. I don't have my green Railveyor polo.
Got it. Gentlemen, there's a lot to cover today. I'm going to give a shout out to our sponsors. Gowdy's not on with us today. So I'm going to read out our sponsors, and we've got a ton of stuff to cover about Railveyor for part two. So bear with me for a couple minutes and we'll get back to it. First sponsor is EPCM. Established in 1980, EPCM is a global engineering, procurement, and construction management firm. They deliver comprehensive solutions through EPCM engineering, EPCM automation, EPCM service and supply, and Technoglius Cobra. I'm going to have to double check with them to make sure I'm saying that right. Contact them to help you accomplish your goals. Please email info@epcm.com. They had a great episode, very interesting. So check that out on our channel as well. Savinaw Equipment, a longtime sponsor, supplies new and used equipment around the world, from placer to underground to ore processing plants. They have gold concentrating tables, trommels, and mineral jigs in stock now to take advantage of the high gold prices. Go to savinawequipment.com to view all their inventory, and remember, they list more equipment every day. Another great episode, Holly Frontier Lubricants and Specialties. This includes the Petro Lubricant brand. Petro Canada Lubricants products and services are proven to maximize equipment performance, productivity, and overall savings. From heavy-duty engine oils to hydraulic fluids, automatic transmission. This is where the reading comes in. Automatic transmission fluids and gear oils and greases. Petro-Canada Lubricants is committed to delivering innovative solutions that deliver value and keep businesses moving. You can go to learn more at lubricants. Oh, wow, ad copy. Learn more at lubricants.petro.canada.com. or contact them at 1-866-335-3369 to arrange a call with one of their technical experts. I feel like God is going to judge me a lot on this ad read. Now, two more to go. CIM 2022 Convention and Expo is coming back to Vancouver in person, May 1st to 4th. Show all your products and services in mining technology, digitalization equipment, consulting, and engineering. There are a whole lot of perks waiting for exhibitors at this expo, and it will sell out fast. If you're a researcher thinking about what mining will look like for future generations, this convention is the perfect place to present your technical papers or lead a short course. Visit CIM.org CIM.org for all the details. Book your exhibitor space and submit your abstract today. That's CIM.org. And last but certainly not least, Power Zone. When you need a specialized team of world-class engineers for your oil and gas pipelines, dewatering, and any fluid handling needs, you want to visit powerzone.com. In addition to their inventory of rebuilt pumps, motors, engines, they also have an amazing team to design and engineer your system, no matter the challenge, no matter the location. Get in the zone with Power Zone. Visit powerzone.com. All right. Thank you very much to our sponsors. Okay. Jim Hawkins, can we just, we touched on a little bit. Can we just talk a little bit more about your background and sort of that decision of coming over to Railveyor?
Sure. As I said, I had a 35-year career in the mobile equipment industry, or working for an OEM in the mobile equipment business, with focus on, in the last role, focus really on mining technology and mobile equipment automation. What appealed to me about Railveyor was that it was this technology being an answer to so many of the mining customers' problems today, of how does one move material safely with the smallest environmental impact and do that in a way that is at the least cost possible. And this technology does all of that, and it does it today. It's doing it, around the world. And I think Jim Fisk will probably talk more about that, but it's not something that has to be invented. It's something that works well today. And because of that, I think it's the right time for the mining industry to be looking at Railveyor as a material handling solution to the problems they face today.
And was the progress they've made? I'm sort of in the, was that a major part of the decision, seeing the success that they'd already had, and sort of what did you what did you see that you could bring to the table, or what are sort of your goals now that you've sort of got, like you said, you started in October, so you're kind of into it now. What are sort of the goals that are developing, and what did you see that you could bring to the table when you joined?
Sure. In my last role working for an OEM, the technology business, the mining technology business, was kind of a startup within that company. This business is moving kind of out of the startup phase into a period of what we anticipate will be fairly rapid growth. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I thought I could help bring to this company is how do we work through this growth phase that we expect to be fairly significant in the next couple of years.
Jim Fisk, I want to jump it over to you for a second. That when you're talking and you've brought in a new CEO, you've done this rebrand. Is there, how would I ask it? How did you know that it was time to make these changes? You put up a new website, new CEO. I'd say new CEO is a bigger step than the rebranding, but you're putting all of this together now. What sort of triggered you knowing that it was the time to make these sort of changes?
Well, we started to see acceptance in the marketplace. We started to see growth. Quite simply, if you go back over our history, for 10 years, we had like 4 transactions, 4 systems installed, and right now we're anticipating 4 in the next year.
Wow.
Okay. So it just means that the market's changing. And as bad as it sounds, I'm not getting any younger every day. So at some point, you got to be intelligent enough to realize you're not going to do this forever. Mm-hmm. And if you're reasonably got a little bit of common sense, you line that all up ahead of time instead of waiting until the last minute and find out, the whole world came to an end because you fell over. And no, I'm not have no health issues or anything else, Jerrod.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying.
Just a little bit of common sense of saying I'm getting close to 70 and I'm nowhere near as good as when I was 40. Okay.
Yeah. Did you, and it is true though, you do see people, they push right to that last limit and then it's a little bit too late, or it just even being a step behind when they could have done it a few years earlier and really contributed a lot.
No matter who you are, as you get older, your body won't let you do things you used to do, and neither does your mind. And so it's smart money brings people in that are smarter and better and quicker and slicker. And that's what we did with Jim, because he is all of the above. It's the right thing to do. So yeah, for the betterment of the product, betterment of the people, that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
I'm very curious, Jim, just stay with you for a moment. Those 4 projects, now you're talking about, you've got 4 or 5, hopefully that'll be going ahead this year. I know we're going to talk about some that are actually in those stages. Very simply, what did you do right in those 4 projects? I mean, I'm sure the first one would have had its challenges because it's, first install, and then the second one, by the 4th one, so sort of, when you look back, where do you see that you got it right, to get it to a point where now you can bring in a new CEO, rebrand, scale up, all these things that now you're trying to do?
At the end of the day, where we got it right, and Jim can probably address this better than me, but really, is the product perform? I mean, we are the most energy efficient tool. When all the companies are running around talking about ESG, we do that already. We don't need to invent new batteries or new charging stations or experiment with hydrogen truck, all that good stuff, and it'll all come in time. Okay, it will definitely all come in time. We don't need any of that. We're ready to go now. It exists, and the people that have used it. I've got one customer that has kept records, and they used to haul by truck, and right now they're saving 92% of their operating cost of what they did by truck. So those kind of numbers get people's attention, and then they start asking. And quite frankly, they don't just ask us; they ask the people that have used our stuff.
Right.
And it's all good. I mean, we, like everything else, there's that one day when that we had a small problem, but it's all good, and it's been years now. I mean, the stuff's been out there active since, I'm going to tell you 2014, but 2015, something like that, Jerrod, day in, day out. And the one in South Africa has been running since 2007, and they still use it every single day to handle 100% of their stuff. So it's that which gets the new customer. And Jim can talk about the stuff we got coming up. I mean, it's pretty exciting, to be honest.
Let's talk about that. Jumping over to you, Jim, for the upcoming. How much can you talk about sort of some of these upcoming projects, what you have going on, going into 2022?
Sure, we can do that. Before we leave this topic of what was done right, Jim made the point that the stuff works.
Right.
And we recognize this is a material handling system that becomes mission critical for the mining customer. Once they commit to moving material with Railveyor, they're all in. And in addition to the stuff works, what attracted me to this company and what I think has helped make them successful is there is a team of really dedicated and experienced professionals behind this who do whatever it takes to make the system work when it's installed and being commissioned on the customer site. So the stuff works, and it's backed up by this really talented team. So that's what kind of has helped get to this point. There have been a number of things that change in the technology. Jim talked about 4 systems installed over 10 years and 4 this year. In that 10-year window, there's a lot of things that change. I'll let Jim talk about a little of that. What we have coming here in the near term is, sites that were being installed and commissioned in Europe and the former CIS, in the US. We have some deals pending that we're working on in Australia, in Asia, a lot of stuff pending in Central and South America. So as we talked earlier, the business is poised now for some pretty significant growth as customers recognize the benefits of Railveyor and start to adopt this technology.
What are the discussions now with these customers? Because Jim, Fisk, like you mentioned, it's such a like there's no half in, like it is a commitment to switch over to a Railveyor system.
Yep.
And while we're talking, there's going to be pictures coming up, so people can, we've unpacked sort of some of what the basics of the system on the other episode, so people can see. So Jim Hawkins, what are the discussions now? I mean, the technology is proven. So these 4 or 5 projects, is it really, what is that communication like with companies when they're doing such a major switch? Because seems to me, if I was a mine operator, that would be, even once it's approved and going ahead, just that communication to make sure everything goes smoothly when you're doing such a big shift. So can you talk through that process?
Sure. The conversation tends to be around understanding, what is this thing going to look like when I install it and operate it in my mine?
Right.
We can talk in general terms about, what it can do. And we always talk about Railveyor as being clean, safe, and profitable. Clean because it's fully electric. We can plug into whatever source of electricity, whether it's the grid or some renewable energy source. It makes extremely good use of the energy. We're talking about steel wheels running on a greased steel track that has the lowest rolling resistance of any option that's available to the mining customer today. It has a very small physical footprint. Where you think about rail, and your mind immediately jumps to heavy rail, and you think of cars that are 3 to 5 meters tall and needing 5 to 10 meters of width to install a rail. This stuff is a meter wide, and it can be laid on grade. You don't have to move material to install a Railveyor system. So that physical footprint is very small. It not only makes good use of the energy, but it can produce energy. We have these drive stations that we set out that power and control the trains throughout their operation. And when they're going downhill and the cars pass through those drive stations, they can actually generate electricity. So very clean operation, produces no dust, therefore requires really no water in its operation, and it's extremely quiet.
Half the industry just perked up when you said no water. They went,
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And that's a tribute to the fact that the material doesn't get bounced around in the cars when it's moving, and it doesn't require any kind of infrastructure alongside the track. You don't require haul roads that require watering, as an example. And then it was quiet. Just to put that in perspective, rather than getting to decibels, you can stand next to a Railveyor system, and that spectator noise level is about the same as what you would experience in a luxury car going down the highway.
Really?
So, very clean kind of technology, safe for obvious reasons. You take people out of the material handling operation, and we love people, but people don't always behave in the way that we want them to. And by taking them out of those operations, we reduce them from the chance of being injured. So it's very safe. And because of all that efficiency, it's really the lowest operating cost of any alternative material handling system out there. There are always, special cases with the mine layout, the kind of material, et cetera. But almost everything we look at, we have an operating expense because the efficient use of energy, because of very low maintenance costs that make it really the best deal for the mining customer. So that's where those conversations tend to circulate around those topics, in getting the miner comfortable that we actually can deliver on those levels. And I think what we often experience, and I experience this myself coming from the mobile equipment business, when you look at some of these numbers, you start to wonder, is that real?
Right. Yeah.
And the fact is, those numbers are real. It is what we're able to accomplish with this technology.
No, and it's I know about that stuff from doing online shows. I mean, it took a while. It took us it's not as heavy an investment for people. So it's not like Railveyor in that sense at all. But just looking at online numbers and people go, what, it's such, because it's such a wide audience that you can reach people all over the world all of a sudden. That took a while for people to understand, how do you get 100,000, couple 100,000 people watching a month? It's like, because there is no limit. And in your case, you're, just like the noise reduction, no dust, lack, the water, like those types of things. I can actually see how that would take a people, because if you've lived in a world, a lot of people, both of you have worked in the industry a long time. It's actually a learning change, even if it's so much better, because you're talking to a lot of people that have worked 35, 40 years in an industry. So has that, I guess to both of you, is that still a challenge, just having those discussions, or is there such a hunger for ESG now that there's sort of that they just want to know what you offer, as opposed to sort of convincing them, if that question makes sense?
I think you see a bit of both, Jerrod, in all honesty. Obviously it's an individual thing, but I think you see a bit of both. But definitely the industry is focusing on ESG now, way more than they first did, to say the least. If I roll this all the way back to 2010 and talk to a potential customer back then, because there were no customers, but talk to a potential customer back then, when talking to them, the fact that it used that it was energy efficient really was superfluous to them. It didn't mean a whole lot. If you started asking them, so what's it cost to operate their truck? Quite frankly, most time we spent a month in a debate on, because they didn't really keep track of what it cost to operate the truck. Or, we buy fuel as a company. We didn't buy fuel per truck, and all kinds of stuff. Okay. And it's all the ancillary stuff. You get rid of the water, that means you get rid of the water truck. You get rid of the water truck, get rid of the big truck, means you get rid of the grader. You get rid of all that, pretty soon you have to get rid of part of the garage. It's what I call the snowball effect. Once you're in, the snowball starts rolling downhill, where it gathers up a lot more than just, golly gee, I got rid of a truck driver, or I suddenly figure out how to operate my truck, what I call remote, and what they refer to as autonomous. It's, but nonetheless, you don't need any of it. You just don't need it. It becomes a game changer. But yeah, and our stuff, like everybody else's, we continue to evolve it. That's a non-stop process, to be honest. And so that's each one's better than the last one, because each one you learn stuff from. But we try to make sure that all the lessons we learn are backward compatible, so we can go back to the original one and make them all better on a non-stop basis.
Because you said your first one is still in operation, right? In South
Absolutely.
Africa?
Yeah, and that one has not been modified. It's the real deal, and it has not stopped.
That's okay. I was just going to quickly ask about, well, not quickly. I want to talk a little bit about the project you've got going. I think that I got a note that the contract was signed in 2021. So this is getting commissioned. So how will you carry out a project like the one in Europe? Will you have people on the ground? Will you bring the third-party contractors in? How does it actually get implemented? Is that a large-scale project? Can you talk a little bit more about that? I'll hand that to either one of you.
I'll grab that, Jim, if that's okay.
Yeah.
What we've done with all of our projects so far, and we're open to change this depending upon the customer's needs or desires. You're going to find really fast, everything we do with Railveyor, even when it comes to implementing, is going to be focused around what does the customer want, what fulfills their need, and better yet, not only what makes them happy, what delights them is what I'm always after. So in this case, they'll have in that particular case, I suspect they're going to have their own crew doing the install. What we always provide is supervision to approve the installation, so everything's put together right, put together the specification, meets our approval, blah, 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 all that stuff. So we got guys that they're measuring, checking, and advising and coaching. And this has been done before. This is a quicker way, a better way, that type thing.
Right.
And then we'll wind up with a team of 2 or 3 guys that go there for commissioning. And commissioning involves, first thing first is start running a train empty just to make sure that it actually fits through everything. The ultimate dimension check
Right.
is everything in the clear, right? And then slowly speed the trains up, and if it's multiple trains, get all the trains to work together. So that sounds a little crazy, but if you got like 4 or 5 trains on a single track, they got to get in and out of bypasses on time and all that. And then you add material and you keep going, and finally hand it over to the customer. All of that's done through our programming. So that's why it becomes a team. So that we've got guys looking at mechanical as well as the software side of it and programming the system so it works together. But that's atypical. And who does the physical install can be a contractor, can be the customer. If need be, we could put together a team to do it, but so far there had not been a request.
Right.
The other thing we have a propensity to do is we have learned to actually hire in-country people as much as we can. So it's not somebody that can't speak the language, that don't understand the customs and all that stuff. It's typically somebody that literally lives there, that we hire on board. We go through a lot of training with them, and they become our representatives there.
I just want to quickly go back to Jim Hawkins. You mentioned about it can go with the grade, the grade of whatever whatever the layout is of the mine. Is that, and I just wanted to clarify, Jim Fisk, you've done multiples of these installs. So do you know that going in that we're going to go with this grade? Like, do they ever know, okay, we need to take out, we're going to push through here so it doesn't have to go this corner? Like, is that all planned out before, or does it depend on the mine? Like, when you go there to do the install, or when you assemble the people to do the install, is every detail already planned out, or is there sort of a progression? How does that sort of work? Especially, again, going to a place like Europe where there's a bit of distance between you and the install.
Sure. Well, we work with the customer well before the installation,
right,
to understand the topographical layout of the route. It typically starts with a route that the customer selected.
Right.
We're going to load at point A, we're going to dump at point B. There could be multiple load points, multiple dump points. We start with that topography, apologies. And from that, then we work with the customer to try to optimize the design. And that's really where the expertise of the Railveyor team comes in. We work, miners know how to mine, they know how to design mines. Our team knows how to design Railveyor systems, right, and how to make the best use of the technologies that we have available to us. And so the magic happens when you can bring the customer and the Railveyor engineers together and determine what is the optimal path from a CapEx and an operating expense standpoint in designing that route. What that all means is by the time we get to installing the system, yeah, that's all well defined, and we understand what the grades are going to look like, the layout of the mine, where the track has to go, where the drive stations are going to be placed, et cetera. Now, did I cover that, Jim? Or?
Yeah, that does. The other thing we use that for, though, is that the custom interface is valuable on the front end. Because the other thing we use it for, quite frankly, is tell us where we have to develop improvements, Jerrod. Before, a year ago, if you'd asked us what radius curve we could do on the ground, we would have told you a 30-meter radius curve with what we call an 8-foot car, 2.42 or whatever it is meters long. Okay, we always knew we could do a shorter car that would get us down to a 20-meter radius curve. But after talking to clients enough during those engineering meetings, we had a couple of instances where that wasn't tight enough. So we now have a 4-foot car, or slightly more than a meter, okay, 1.2, but that will handle a 15-meter radius curve, and we can do that. Okay, that development work wouldn't have gone on without those customer engineering interactions for everybody to understand the true need of it. And there's lots of little stuff like that goes on that has to happen. It helps the product evolve.
Yeah, it would be Yeah, it would be interesting one of these days. I love to talk about, well, having part two, and it's always nice to, have different layers. If we ever get you back on, hopefully we do. Be very interesting to have that, maybe a customer come on and talk about that process. It'd be, I'm sure there's been some
Absolutely.
interesting discussions over the years as you go through that. I want to bring it back, well, to my home, to Canada, and talk a little bit about another project. I think it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, KWG Resources is putting in a system. Can we talk a little bit about that one?
Jim, over to you.
Sure. Well, we have been working with KWG on a design of a Railveyor system to bring material over a distance of roughly 300 kilometers, as they're designing how to most efficiently and with the least environmental impact take advantage of the resources that are in place there in what's known as the Ring of Fire. That work is ongoing with KWG. We have completed, to Jim's earlier point, we've completed that interaction with the customer and understanding what that design looks like, understanding some of the detail of the topography that we will deploy that system across, the kind of power requirements that will be required, the length of the trains, the number of drive stations, etc. All that's been pretty well defined. And again, just in process of continuing to work with the customer as they move through their various approval processes. We don't take the lead in those. We work with our customers in those situations, but we're right there with them in helping to make sure that we're providing all the information they need to get those approvals in place and to start mining.
Are you able to disclose, I don't want to put you on the spot. Are you able to disclose like details of what a system like this would look like on their site?
Well, the system itself, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. It's a big one. It would certainly be the biggest system.
That's essentially what I was asking.
As it spans, a distance of 300 kilometers. Wow,
okay.
That is a significantly long system.
Wow.
When we think about Railveyor in most mines, they're anywhere from a couple to maybe 15 kilometers.
Wow.
In length.
This would be huge then.
It's a very large system, but for us, it's it's not difficult.
Right.
Once you figure out how to do that, it's simply a matter of installing more track and having more drive stations and longer trains.
Yeah.
So it's quite possible to do it. And what KWG has been very interested in is not only the environmental benefits that we can bring by running this off of grid power, but also the very small physical impact that the Railveyor system would have, much smaller than the alternatives that they've considered.
I guess when you talked, especially when you talk about places like Canada, and it's that local, be able to hire a local, that it's a system that you're not just bringing in your own team of installers, and that must be also an attractive thing to these companies too, right? Be able to use local community, have local involvement in these contracts.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Jim.
We found that extremely favorable. We've never had that fall into a bad space with any customer yet, and we try to do as much of it as we possibly can. I mean, there are limits that you can do with this stuff, but as much as we can, we prefer to do that.
Jim Fisk, I wanted to ask you, and this is one of these questions that I don't know exactly how the audience feels, but I have this own personal curiosity. Something that sort of really interests me is initial contact. It's such a big, I think probably for us, we do so many shows that you might only have 5 minutes to make an impression on a company. Yours is obviously, it's a major investment. KWG, we're talking, 300 kilometers of rail, like that sort of thing. So it's a different thing. But I always am curious, that first meeting, that you sit down with someone from their team, whoever it is, and I'd be curious to know who that is, and the discussion starts. And you come in there and it's just that initial discussion. Do you sort of, how does something like that go when you're talking to a mine about such a major investment and or shift in the way that they're doing something?
Well, if we stay with that one as the example, which is maybe not a fair example, but an honest one, Canadian Chrome, or Canada Chrome, I think it's called, whatever, is a subsidiary of KWG.
Right.
And they are dealing with the transport issue. Their CEO, quite frankly, we have a mutual acquaintance. He just called up and said, I was told I need to talk to you.
Right.
And then he explained what he was trying to do. And I went, oh, and he has a very extensive heavy rail background, as I do.
Right.
And as soon as he told me what the original plan was, I said, that's not going to make any financial sense. And after having a quick discussion, he said, that's why I was told I needed to come talk to you.
Right.
So from there on, it was all his group and our group putting engineers together, figuring out that. And with that plan, there's some offshoots that come out of it that are just unbelievably good. Because we need power to operate the system. They're going to bring grid power all the way up to all the First Nation towns along the way. So it not just power, but also high-speed internet, because I have to communicate.
Right.
So you're going to see whole sections of Canada that didn't have power other than gensets and didn't have internet suddenly light up. That I think is a positive for everybody. It sure makes sense to me. Yeah, makes sense to me. It is. Because life will get a lot better. So it's all been the right stuff. But that first conversation literally was a poor guy calling me up and saying, this is my name. I know this guy, you know this guy. He told me to call you. Now, normally that's not how it works with our customers. Normally our customers, quite frankly, will put forward an inquiry to us. They'll contact us in various ways, but usually over the internet, and put forward an inquiry saying, I saw your stuff and I'm interested. And we do the normal trade show circuits and all the normal get your name out there stuff. But that's more typical what happened instead of some poor guy calling you up and say, I was told to call you.
Yeah, there must be a lesson in there though. For someone who's been in, you brought up your age earlier, so that's why I'm taking the liberty of doing it now. There must be a lesson in there. I mean, we see the range of ages of people that watch the show, and it's anywhere from 23 all the way up to 70 plus. That these relationships you build, sometimes they might come to fruition and have value 10, 20 years down the line. So it also speaks to something about having a reputation in the industry, that someone is willing to give someone else your phone number so that they'll and trust that you'll take care of them. And I'm curious, and from both of you, actually, I put this question, is sort of the values you bring. Jim, Fisk, we'll keep it over to you, and then Jim Hawkins asked you the same question, is sort of that the value system that you operate with personally in this environment, in the mining industry.
In the mining industry, what I do is the first thing I'll tell every miner in the world is I don't know. I'm not a miner. I can create machines, and I'm comfortable doing that all day long. Okay, and I know how to haul transport stuff, but I'm not a miner. And what my job with them is, there to learn. I need to know what they know if I'm going to be effective at giving them a product that's worth them using. And I really do need to know that. The other one, of course, is give generously with your own time. Even if it's one of the things that we do some of, we don't do as much as I'd like to do, but we're doing a bunch of, is actually interacting, where we're taking graduate kids in mining school and actually doing Railveyor 101s and discussing and answering all the questions in the field and the questions. I worked for 3 months with a group that was trying to put literally Railveyor on the moon, part of a NASA program to mine water. Okay. But obviously there's no return on investment in that stuff other than the human capital. Them young men and women that were in that class someday will be the miners making decisions in the future. When we're talking to a guy at a trade show that we know it's obviously not going to be a hit that day, you don't know. I mean, share and be open with all your knowledge all the time. And the more we share and are open, the more we reap reward when I come back. Over to you, Mr. Hawkins. What's your view on that?
Yeah.
Well, I think Jim summed it up really well, but in my experience in the mining industry, miners value people who can help them get things done and solve their problems, and who are there with them, when things don't go well, when things break. And that's what's so impressive about our Railveyor organization. I mentioned earlier, we got a team of really dedicated professionals with a lot of experience in designing and installing and commissioning this kind of technology around the world. And so I think that's what should make this business very appealing to many of our customers, is what we can do from solving their problems and standing behind that system over the long haul.
And I think at this point we're sort of I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about sort of the future of Railveyor as well. Before we wrap up the show, Jim Hawkins, can you sort of outline some of what is coming down? I was going to say coming down the pipe. I guess I should have rail. What is sort of looking ahead? I'm sure there's some new technologies, the automation systems. What is sort of you looking at going forward?
Sure. We're looking at a whole lot more inputs to the automation system to control the train. Of note, we're working on image recognition. So understanding, what's ahead of the train. It's important from the perspective of enhancing safety, make sure as the system is very quiet, there's somebody standing on a rail in front of the train. It can reduce the likelihood of a derailment. And, we talk about the Ring of Fire installation with the Canadian Chrome. We're going to have to make sure that we don't run into moose or bear or other kinds of wildlife that will find itself crossing our tracks. So that's what's kind of nearest term of what we're working on. And then, as Jim mentioned, continuous improvement around improving the efficiency and the operating cost of the technology. I'll let him speak to some of those things, because in those last 10 years, there have been a number of improvements that have happened on his watch.
Sure. Jim, do you want to highlight a couple of those?
Let's start off with this, what sounds like an obvious one, but better brakes. Originally, the system was set up with hydraulic brakes with a whole separate system and all that. And quite frankly, it meant you had to maintain it and keep it bled and all that.
Right.
We now use a spring applied electric brake, which doesn't require any of that. And it has more braking capacity than what we did before. It sounds really simple when I say it like that, but it took a while to figure that out. So we've got that derailment detection, so that quite frankly, if a train is derailed, the train it's light enough and easy enough to move that, believe it or not, it'll run for a long time derailed. We now have a system in place we can actually tell that happen and know to bring it to a stop before we do any serious damage, or at least minimize the damage we have, if there's any.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. So it can run if it's like a little bit out of line when you say derailed.
Derailed. It'll be running in line with the track, but I'll have a wheel off the rail.
I see.
And
okay.
this will pick up that one wheel.
Right.
And tell me, let's fix this before we have a bigger issue. It's all of it, and even what we do with the feedback signals and all that back to the PLC. All of it designed around how do I actually tell what's going on and take a proactive action instead of waiting, how do I fix this so we don't have a bigger problem down the road. Those are some examples. Of course, we're always trying to make the cars lighter, always trying to make them better. Same thing with drive stations. Yeah. How do I get them more adaptable for what the customer really wants? How do I get them so they're adaptable for the customer environment? Because in our case, the customer environment can be half an island, or it could be the equator, or anywhere in between.
Right.
I mean, It's I spent a bunch of time the other day talking to a bunch of folks down in Indonesia in the middle of their rainy season. You know, and they're telling me about getting
challenge.
Well, yeah, when they're talking about, you know, we're getting 250 millimeters of rain in an hour. And oh, by the way, we've had that for the last 7 days. It's a little bit different environment than what you and I would be used to in Canada. I'm going, huh? We'd be washed off the face of the earth by then. But it's that. It's always dealing with that stuff. So
yeah, the environment.
It is continuous improvement on a nonstop basis. So.
Well, Jim Fisk, I'm gonna actually wrap up with one question for you, because you know you starting this company and doing it, and I'm curious, and I am relating this back to myself, because we do small units. We we're a business, and we're ads and guests and that, and it's a small unit and a lot of quantity. You know, we might have a couple hundred customers or something like that going. You started a business that was 4. You did 4. Now you've got a whole bunch more on the go. There's all this growth. I mean, it's very obvious to see that the growth pattern that's happening. I'm sure there was other options of things you could have done that would just, make a living and that sort of thing. But you had this sort of vision and sort of to change the way that mines would move product. I guess the question is, those first, let's call it 3 to 5 or 6 years, how did you sort of stick with it? And I'm asking you this. You mentioned young people. There are people that watch a show, and there's probably people watching the show that they might even be thinking of packing it in, and they have big ideas. How did you sort of stick to it and keep it and get it to this point?
Well, from a personal perspective, I don't relent very well. Okay, never have. But it all comes back down to me the very first time I seen the product, and in fairness, I mean, the owners pursued me to become a board member, and they showed me the product, and I did a bunch of energy calculations watching the product work at our test site at our John McCall Test Facility. And quite honestly, I didn't believe the numbers. I did the numbers 3 times on a calculator. The first time I thought I made a mistake. Second time I thought that, quite frankly, if my college days professor had been there, he probably slapped me alongside the head saying, "You forgot how to do this, stupid." Okay. And the third time I had the same number, and I finally figured out maybe I did do it right, but the number was no different when Jim talked about it. It was so unbelievable that you didn't believe it. And my whole life I'd been around heavy rail and telling the world how efficient it was and everything else. And we make heavy rail look like it's the dumbest decision in the world. And we make trucks look like they're even dumber yet.
You like my rails behind me as we're talking about this?
There you go. Exactly. We'll get you new rails. But just from an energy, just literally from an energy efficient perspective and a simplicity perspective, that's what got me hooked. And then once we're hooked, it's called, how do we make it better?
Right.
We spent the first 5 years actually redesigning everything so it could be manufactured. The very first stuff was a good prototype, but you couldn't make it and couldn't sell it to the customer. Everything in there was made as a handmade one-off type deal.
Right.
We don't do any of that anymore. Now it's all production run stuff, which is what it took. But how you stick to it, you believe in it and you go. And in my case, it was a little weird because technically I was retired the first time I saw it. So I chose to do it versus, having to do it. Let's go make a living. Those days were gone. So yeah, and it's been a lot of fun, and it will continue to be a lot of fun because the product is a game changer. It will change what the miner does and how they do and what everything interacts with it. I've been told numbers, I don't know which are true or not, but I've been told literally 70% of the cost of running a mine is all in logistics. Okay. If you stop to think about that, and let's assume that's right, so only half of it we can impact. Okay. That means I can reduce their cost structure 35% on an operating cost basis. So how much more ore does that open up? How many more mines that were about ready to close suddenly, gee, the cutoff grade got changed, et cetera, et cetera. How many more years life do you get out of mine? And when you're in a small community, how many more years those people got jobs?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if we can make it better for the people, better for our customer, it's the right thing to do. So that's how.
Environment.
Yep, you got it. That's why I've done it and why I hang in there, and and don't take this while I'm not retiring. I'm still staying on the board. And why not? And hopefully 5 years from now, we won't introduce Mr. Hawkins as the new CEO anymore. We'll consider him the old dusty one by then.
Well, I think the first year, I think you're still new, because there's a lot. I mean, no matter what you bring to the table, there's a lot to learn and putting everything together. Jim, I'm sure, Jim Hawkins, I'm sure for you, it's, all this work has been done to bring it to this point. But I certainly don't want to understate, as someone who's been in business myself, when you're now leading this team forward, the new challenges and the new opportunities, those, it's a whole other different, bringing it to the industry is one thing, and now expanding it across the industry. So, I guess to wrap up this interview, I just wish you the best in that endeavor, because it's a big responsibility, and I genuinely think you have a great product behind you.
Oh, thank you. And you're absolutely right. There's still a lot of work to be done, a lot of challenges to overcome. But the key is, we think we've got the best mousetrap for the industry, and it will help transform the industry, to Jim's point. And we've got a great team behind us to help the industry do that.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to updating some of the images behind me. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. There's go to Railveyor. I just want to make sure I've got the website right. There'll be plenty of links there, but it's railveyor.com. There'll be links everywhere so you can get to it. Go check out more. They've got projects that they've done. They've got specifications and the ESG side of things. Lots of information there. So go check that out. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please keep suggesting guests. Please keep working with us and supporting the show. It makes it a ton of fun to do that, to do these episodes. And thank you to our partner, CIM. They provide so much value to the industry, and a lot of people don't realize they move presidents, I think, every year is how they do it. Yep. One of our first guests, he walked, and I'm Winship, I believe. I can't remember his first name now. He walked by, saw our camera set up, and sat down and did our first interview. And a lot of people don't realize that CIM has been a supporter from the beginning in different ways, and now they help us bring you mine now. So thank you to them, and hopefully we'll see you in person May 1st to 4th. Thank you, and see you on the next episode of Mining Now.